Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends. This is your co-host, Scott Schimmel. I'm here with Bob Goff.
Hey, everybody. I'm just so glad to be spending a little bit of time with you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
We are talking with Henry Cloud, who's like a titan of wisdom when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, there's some people you just want to shut up and listen, and Henry's one of them. If he starts talking... So if you don't have a pencil and paper, you need a pencil and paper, or listen to it twice. But this is one where it's going to come at you quickly. And that's really good. That's just the guy that Henry is. And we've been friends for many, many years. And he's always been just a steady influence in my life. He's been even those friends that you have that even if you aren't talking to them constantly, there's a force for good in your life. And their presence in your life just gives context to the decisions. It isn't like, what would Henry do? We're not going to get wristbands out. But he has such a profound faith. He is a calm soul, but passionate about helping people figure out things in their lives.
Yeah, he's also really funny.
He is. He's just a good guy. Quick to laugh. Always. We've gone on a couple adventures together, and it's like listening to a 13-year-old kid. He's got energy and enthusiasm. You're just going to love what he has to say.
Well, as it relates to the Dream Big framework, I mean, no matter what your big dream is in the world, if you're not deeply connected with others in a real, authentic way, there's just going to be something lacking in your life.
Yeah, you can go through the motions, but we were not meant to live in isolation.
Yeah.
That it's in community. Now, some of us are really gregarious. I'm one of them. I just love being with people. But even so, to have some time of reflection, and this might be a great time for you, is there's a word, a phrase, an idea that we talk about. Jot that thing down and then drill down on it and say, hey, is there more here as I really apply this to my life? What's some actionable things that can come out of this? What would be a next courageous step for me to take?
Yep. So pull out pen and paper, listen to this episode a couple times. I know I have already, and I'm taking notes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Dream Big podcast today. And I've got a good friend, Henry Cloud, with us. And Henry and I met a number of years ago. And was it in Canada? Was that the first time we were together?
I think it was. Yeah, I joined you with Don Miller. We came up there for a retreat.
Yeah, I remember we had I have an old Beaver seaplane, and didn't we get in that thing and take a lap?
Well, that's what you would describe it. All I know is I get in the right seat of an airplane, and a few hundred feet up, you go, okay, take it over. You had never asked me if I could fly. Had I ever flown? Was I licensed? Was I psychotic? Was I on LSD? You just said, take the reins. And I said, well, this is Bob Goff.
Nothing sets up our conversation today better than that, because that's kind of how relationships work. Right, you get one. Somebody gives you the controls and say, "Go fly this thing." You'd be like, "How is this going to work? I don't have experience and all that." And you've been a voice in my life and in the lives of our family for a really long time. I love how you've participated in so many people's lives and just given input on relationships. So this thing that we've been calling Dream Big, it's a framework of ideas, and the first one was like just having an ambition and helping people figure out what is your ambition and how do you pursue that. What was yours? Because you're a voice that so many people trust, your books and video series and all that. What was your ambition?
You mean early on?
Yeah, early on.
Yeah, well, first of all, is try to get off the pavement. No, I'm serious. That's where it all came from. I had just hit a real hard season in college and got really, really depressed. And that's when I reached out to God one day and didn't know if anybody was there or not. And he showed up. I just said, help me. And what happened was he put me in a context of a small group of people of faith, and they kind of helped me get through that season. And through that, I really started to get interested. I was reading about how we get well and how we get better. And I really fell in love with the whole content area of psychology and spiritual growth and how those went together. I was an accounting and finance major at the time. And so I switched my major to psychology and made it my passion was I really wanted to understand how spiritual growth and spiritual development affects the areas of life that psychologists deal with. Our clinical arenas, depression, anxiety, phobias, addiction, stress, burnout, all that. The relational arena, all the way that relationships work, and our performance arena. How do you find dreams and goals and find your strengths and actually get it to work? But I was interested in all that, not only from the clinical side, but from the faith side. So my mission became I wrote it down. I'd like to find out and show how the Bible can make you well instead of crazy. And that became my life mission. And went knocking on doors and for a job. And my first job was in a leadership consulting firm that worked with CEOs and executive teams. And so it's always been in the same direction. There's a proverb that says a person's heart determines their path and then God directs their steps. And I think that it's that, we get in touch, we do a lot of things to shut off what's not us and what everybody else says we ought to be and all that. And you find your real heart of what where it comes together with your strengths and your abilities and a need in the world, as well as some passion. And you step out and then you begin to get directed.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's kind of what happened.
I love the idea of you've mentioned passions a couple times, and so as people are listening, if you were like me and nodding your head as you're hearing Henry talk about the things that were important to him and relationships and how do you connect your faith, whether faith is a big deal for you or not, these are things that connect us all together. And I think when you have a passion, it's worth like pursuing that, like figuring out why do I do the things that I do. And when I think of you, Henry, you've explained that just so well in not a complicated way. You didn't talk to me about amygdalas and this, and you didn't talk about brain parts, although you know all of those. You just talked about why in relationships we do the sometimes quirky things or the inexplicable things that we do. And it's really worth like digging down underneath and understanding, why is it that I do those things? Is this me being insecure? Is this me being, and where did that come from? Some people came from a household, a family of origin where your conduct was manipulated by giving and withdrawing love. And so every parent is an amateur at it. It's their first time through. They may have had several children, but they're trying to do it. And then so figuring out how to guide those steps. Sometimes people will give and withdraw love. What do you have to say on that because we're talking about relationships, a healthy way to help your friends and do a little bit of work yourself on exploring your passions?
Well, I would put it this way. It's kind of a paradox because we're talking about how do we have better relationships. And the paradox is the only way to have better relationships is by better relationships, meaning that, the way our relationships work, we're like a computer that gets programmed. And so we have literally ones and zeros written into our brain about, when somebody gets mad at you, here's how you respond. So you either have a program that says, I'm going to listen and try to understand and get this to a good resolution. Or you have a program that says, I'm going to get defensive and blow up at them. And we learn these behaviors and we internalize them in dysfunctional relationships and faulty reward and punishment, scenarios like you've described. And what we have to do is we have to place ourselves into some sort of a healthier community than we are. And, whether that's a small group or it might be with a counselor or a guide or a spiritual guide or a mentor, somebody wise that kind of, it seems like at least they're not drowning, right? They're further down the path than I am. And we go to them and we seek help. And what happens is then we learn better ways of relating, and then that becomes kind of the snowball by which we build even healthier relationships. It's sort of like the rich get richer. If you have something to invest, then it's gonna you know multiply. But if we don't have much, like the parable of the talents, we have a lot of fear and all that. We bury ourselves in the ground and we don't make ourselves vulnerable. And so I think that's where it starts. So, yeah, you said, are there some tools? I'm gonna give you just a couple. If people would focus on these simple things, as my first book was a book called Changes That Heal, and it talked about if you'll make these four changes, it'll heal a gazillion percent of whatever is going on. Number one is the most important thing that we can do is connect versus pull away from people. All the things that create disconnection, pull away from people, not be vulnerable, not open up, try to medicate ourselves in non-relational medicine. You're upset, so you turn to a substance or a habit or something like that instead of turning to a person. So you've got to look at how much do I move towards connecting with people that are safe from a vulnerable place versus staying detached. Number two, in my connections, when I do have relationships and people I love, how much freedom is there? How separate are we? Because if we feel like to have a relationship, I'm going to lose my freedom and you're going to be able to control and manipulate me, and I can't say no to you, and I can't say, no, I don't like that movie, or I don't want to vote for that person, or I want this career, not that one, or I want to have lunch and have some quiet time. And yet you're able to, not you, Bob, but the other person is able to manipulate me with intimidation or guilt or religiosity or shame or whatever, then I'm not free. And so that spoils the connection. And you have a lot of families, they're very connected, but they're very manipulative and controlling. You have other families where there's a lot of freedom, but there's no connection. So you have to balance those two. And you ought to ask the people you're close to, do you feel free in our relationship? Or do you feel like I try to control you in some way? And then the third issue is we're not perfect, but we're designed to be. We're not perfect, but we can imagine what that would be like. And so we have expectations of ourselves and others. And when we fail those, we get disappointed in each other or we get hurt. And that's fine, that's normal. But how well equipped are we to deal with the things that are imperfect? So when somebody fails us, do we go to them and say, you know what, when this happened, it didn't feel good. I'd like to talk about it. We work it out. We don't get mad. We don't judge them and we don't condemn them. Or when we fail, are we able to accept, forgiveness and not beat ourselves up and all that? So the way we handle when people disappoint us or life disappoints us or we disappoint ourselves, do we have forgiveness and can we work through that, or do we come in with a bunch of judgment and shame and shoulds and failure stuff? And then the fourth thing is, are we equal? We're born parents and children in a one up and one down way of seeing the world. And when people grow up, you go through the bar mitzvah, and now you're one of us, right? But what people want to do is they want to play one up and one down games. They want to parent each other and say, you should, or live up to each other's expectations, and really we're all equals. And if we can so those four things, if we can connect and we can be free in our connections, we can deal with imperfections, and we can relate to one another, respecting each other for equals. All the stuff, what else is there other than biology? That's kind of it.
Yeah. So, if you're driving along the road, would you just pull over before you forget this stuff and just write down those 4 points? If not, just listen again. But one of the things that's important is to not just hear things and agree, but then to apply. Because I hear things all the time and I agree. I'm hearing what you're saying. I go like, wow, nailed it. You should write a book. You actually have written many books. But instead to then say, okay, so what's my next step on that? I'm going to take some action on this. 3 minutes of authenticity. Go to Starbucks, bring a friend who's safe, and say, I'm just going to talk to you for 3 minutes. Don't you dare try to fix me. I just want you to listen. You don't even need to bring this up next time we see each other. I'll let you know if I want to talk about it again. But to just carve this new little groove in your brain, 3 minutes at a time to say, I know for me, I'm a pretty upbeat guy by nature. And then I don't want to disappoint people. Yet at the same time, I could become a caricature of who I am because I've had some low days. So to just have the authenticity with the people you work with or ones around, to practice saying, actually, I'm having a really difficult day today and I'm having difficulty putting my finger on it. But here are a couple things I've observed right now. That actually has been something in this last year or two I've tried to be super intentional about doing, so people don't just know an image of who, like Bob's the balloon guy or Henry's the boundaries guy, so he must obviously know where all the boundaries are, or like, but to just say, if things got a little fuzzy here and I don't need your help doing this. I just need to say this so you understand me. That, to your point about being known and having that connection. Because I think if we can have those intimacy in the relationships, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and it comes from what you did as well. You said you talk about moving from talking about it to applying and doing something. Here's what we know about the brain, that the brain runs on circuitry, right? So you've got to have the wiring to be able to do any kind of behavior. And the way that new circuits grow, instead of your old circuits, the way you used to relate to people, the way new circuits grow is it takes kind of 3 or 4 steps. The first one is awareness. We talked about that. You let's say you become aware. Oh, when I'm having a hard time, I don't talk to people. I don't open up. I don't seek help. I move away. So that's an aware. That's not a good pattern. I can see that now. That's kind of the aha. Well, seeing something and aha never changed anybody, but it's a very important first step we have to have. But the second step is we've got to have some sort of practice that's going to focus attention on me in real time when I'm doing that. So what you did was you built in a structure and you said, okay, every day I'm going to remind myself of this issue. I'm going to focus some attention on this and make sure that I'm seeing that I'm doing it again. I'm kind of feeling down and I'm not talking to me. So I'm going to go ask somebody to go have a 3-minute talk. And then you're doing the third ingredient, and that is deliberate practice. So we got awareness, number 1. Number 2, I'm going to focus on this. And number 3, I'm going to actually practice it. And you did it. And what happens is that begins to grow new patterns and new wiring. So the next time, or at some future time, one day, you're not even going to have to think about that. You're going to go, oh, I feel bummed out. I got to call my buddy and go have a cup of coffee. And it's automatic. It's like driving a car. When you first started driving, you had to focus on, okay, what's the accelerator, what's the brake? And then you had to practice, the using on the brake. And then you had to, you just did it over and over. Well, now you don't even pay attention to your driving because that you're wired to do it. And that's how we get healthier and healthier.
Yeah, it's finger memory. You don't remember why you touch the keyboard the way you do. You just remember where the keys are after a while. And what if we did that in our
even remembering that you're remembering?
Yes, bingo. It's just an automatic, almost instinctive thing. One of the practical things, even this morning, I met with a friend in a country that is in a lot of upheaval, and he writes the policy for the country. And one of the things that I've learned from him is to go immediately to why you're doing the things, to keep that thing in mind. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And if we could do that in our relationships, to say, I don't want to love people with an agenda, because people can see that coming a long way. And you actually don't.
It doesn't do us any good either.
It doesn't work, right? What 5,000 advertisements every day that we're exposed to. And if you're an evangelical Christian and you want to be an advertisement for Jesus, it ain't going to work. Like, we get to be evidence of him, right? And so the best evidence of him is to be.
Sometimes I say, God needs a new marketing department because he chose us.
we're not
the best marketing for him, I don't think.
Here's a really practical thing that you and I even did that before we jumped on. We tend to go to the third or fourth question instead of, how you doing in general. Tell me about the people you love the most. And we talked about your family, and because if they're doing great, you're doing great. And if my family is doing well, I'm doing well. But to kind of go down the roll call and maybe start in your conversations with the third question and to get past how are you, which is just being polite. It's terrific, but being polite. But to say, what are some of the things that matter the most to you right now? Or to pause, I'm a big hugger, but I hug everybody except these amazing women that work with me. Instead, we have blessings. I just get a chance to put my hand on their head and to have a moment to just say, are we really, really good? Because if we aren't, it's full stop. We can have a moment to connect and to say, are there more important things going on that we should talk about than what we're about to do? And if you were to practice that with your friend, 3 minutes of authenticity, some of these points that I hope if you're listening, you'll listen again and write them down, and then just keep carving that new little groove over and over and make it a beautiful habit. Henry.
And it doesn't, it's not complicated. This isn't rocket science. One of the things that Tori and I do with our girls, starting when they were probably maybe 5 or 6 or so, and all that we still do it, when the four of us ever have a meal together. And, Olivia's in college now and Lucy's a senior. And so we still do it at home, even the three of us. At dinner, we say, roses and thorns, meaning today, what was your rose? What was a moment? What happy thing happened where life is beautiful and it smelled good? And what was the thorn? What hurt today?
Yeah.
We each do that, and we've done it as long as we've been a family. And they're very simple practices, but they can be life-changing.
And then you can let people know, even in the workplace, that in your friendships, that you become a really safe place. You're just Switzerland. I could, if I was in a place where I needed a voice that I could trust, I know if I called your number, you would answer me. And to be the people that have that reputation when you're with your friends, that you could call, they'd get an answer, and you wouldn't blow a bunch of sunshine at me. You just speak the truth over me. And there's something about that. Henry, tell us some resources for this. Has resonated, no doubt. If are there some resources that you have? Could you let us know the books that you've written that would be helpful?
Well, one of the most exciting resources that I'm talking about right now is if everybody could go to boundaries.me. It's a website, boundaries.me. And it's I say new, started it about a year ago. And what you do is you sign up and I become your growth coach in all these relational things. Now we call it boundaries, but it's everything that fits under that. Like what gets in the way of connection and what gets in the way of, what if you're dealing with an addict or a narcissistic personality that you're close to, or, all of this kind of stuff. And so I'd like to send people there because it's building a great community and a lot of people experience a lot of good things. So I go to boundaries.me and the stuff I talked about earlier, the 4 things come out of my book, Changes That Heal. So take a look at both of those and it'll all add up. You put all that in a blender and you end up looking like Bob Goff is what happens. You just wake up, and you're just like loving people. And so that's,
well,
seriously, you're one of so many people's heroes. So,
well, you're super kind, but I think we're like all kind of doing the dishes, right? I'm the blender that's got all this stuff stuck to the side. And I think by having these conversations, we figure out like what got stuck to the side so that we could get on with the important work of sorting that out so we can help other people on their journeys. And so thank you so much for being that person for me. Less of a guide and more of a Sherpa. Like you're the guy that didn't pick the mountain I was going to go up. You said what I didn't need to carry up that mountain with me because it's not helping me get there. So thank you, Henry. We love you. You're a good friend. I know I speak for millions of people. Your life is just been such a bright light. And not only just the content that you have, but the life that you're leading, the integrity that you have. I just want you to know I just love you, and I'm really grateful you're part of my life.
Well, back at you. I look forward to hanging out in the mountains again sometime soon.
Come on, we built that thing once and it burnt to the ground, but it didn't need to stay burnt down, and we just put the last log up. So you know the dates.
My only request is this time, before you hand over the controls of the airplane, can you get us up to at least maybe 500 feet? So I got a little breathing room on that first step.
It's a deal. All right. Love you, buddy.
Okay, good to talk to you, Bob.
Maybe 2020 is your year to discover the clarity you've been searching for, something that would organize your entire life and give your life meaning. This month, we have a free interactive workbook that you can download through the link in the show notes that will guide you to take that first step towards clarity. Every few months, Bob invites people just like you to gather someplace in the country to spend a few days investing in a Dream Big Live workshop, walking you through a 7-part framework that will guide you in the context of a community of other dreamers to define, declare, and pursue your big ambitions. The next live workshop will be in Bob's hometown, San Diego, and it's right around the corner on February 23rd and 24th. You can get all the info and sign up at dreambigframework.com. That's dreambigframework.com. We hope to see you there. I know one of the things that stuck out to me, a lot of stuff from what Henry said, but he said specifically, make sure that you're spending time with healthier people than you.
Isn't that crazy how that works? That you could say that we're all dealing with the same things. We're just in different places in dealing with the same things. And I'm not trying to figure out if people are ahead or behind me on the trail. I'm just delighted to have the presence of mind to know that we're all on the same trail.
This is the Bob Goff podcast with your friends. So when it comes to friendships for you, has that always come easy, having deep, authentic friendships? Has that been a learning curve for you?
At some point, you just have to flip the switch. You have to say, I'm actually going to be authentic. I do that with the people that I get to work with, that there's moments where we're just dealing with the things of the day, whatever we have to take care of, whatever's next. But we do have moments of authenticity where we could say, you know what is really hard is this, or this is me being super insecure right now. So somehow just like peeling back, you don't need to live and in that mode constantly with everybody, but you just peel back the curtain a little bit, be authentic and say, hey, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. Did I do okay on that, or did I just hurt your feelings? I don't know if that which one happened there, but to say, this is how I feel. There's something beautiful that happens, and it's not a feigned intimacy, that we really want to go deeper in our relationships, whether they're people that you work with, the people that you live with, if you're in high school or college, the people that you're spending time with. And if you could just say just a few moments of authenticity to actually bake that into your day.
Well, I know we get stuck in friendships, stuck in patterns of relating, talking. If you want to change your relationships, what's a good next step, do you think?
One thing I would do is I'd change the vocabulary. I would say in a faith community, you have people that were talking and using words that are very familiar within their faith community, but they've all kind of lacked substance for you. You can have a second-year seminary student tell you what that meant. Somebody talked about how something was going to be redeemed. And that's okay. Like that's terrific. But I remember when I was young, it was still when you could bring a Coca-Cola bottle to the market and you got a nickel by turning in it, because it said a redeemable. And so when somebody says that word, I'm like, oh, it's like a Coca-Cola bottle. It's like it's worth a nickel. In other words, it's worth something. So I would just say, use really plain language to say that thing that went really wrong, to say nothing will be wasted from that. That's actually worth something. The theological concept is redemption. The practical thing is just a reassurance that it's not going to be wasted, what happened on you. So I would say, if you want to carve a new groove in your brain, change the language that you use to describe otherwise familiar ideas.
Well, make sure you go to Henry's website, boundaries.me. He's got so many resources. My wife and I keep just devouring what he's got out there. It's almost unstoppable if you get into it, what it could do to change and transform your relationships.